Gravity Capital here, and today we are talking about buying judgments. Without doubt, some of my most attractive returns have come from purchasing a judgment. And I'll tell you, the buying a judgment is exactly the same thing as lending money secured by a piece of real estate. The only judgment I will buy is a secured judgment against a piece of real estate, which brings me to this topic. When someone gets sued and gets a judgment against them, and if they own a piece of real estate, and if the company knows what they're doing when they get the judgment, they can actually record that judgment against the real estate, and it becomes a lien upon the real estate. It's not as solid as a trustee, but I would give it a good 80 to 90% as good as a trustee against a piece of real estate. Here's a quick transaction that we did on a judgment that we acquired back in 2015. So buying judgments, this was a judgment secured by 3 pieces of collateral. One was some oil and gas wells, one was 34 acres, and one was residential property. So again, when we buy a piece of judgment, or when we buy a judgment, we want to make sure that it's recorded and it's a secured lien against the real estate. This judgment was for $195,000. An individual had hired an oil and gas company to do some work on these oil and gas wells, and then they weren't able to pay them. The original amount of the judgment was $195,000. As you can do with many judgments, is get a huge discount on those. This discount was about 50 cents on the dollar, which, by the way, I rarely will pay 50 cents on the dollar for a judgment. It's more like 10, 20, 30 cents on the dollar, which makes the return skyrocket. This case, guy owed $195,000. I paid $92,000 for it, and my security was this: oil wells, acres, and a residential house property, right? Collateral value was worth $500,000. This puts my loan-to-value ratio, $92,000 on $500,000, about 20%. Off the charts, great loan-to-value. Now, this is what happened after we bought the judgment. We knew that these oil and gas wells were actually producing. We went to the company they were selling the oil and gas to, and we garnished their wages. We got in payments back over a couple of years, $90,000. Keep in mind, $90,000, that's about what we paid. We got all our money back just on the payments from these oil and gas wells. And remember, each one of these deals that you do will have different components to it that you can secure. This one happened to be oil and gas cash flow. We got the $90,000. He still owed us more than that and wasn't able to pay it. So ultimately, 2-3 years after this, we foreclosed. We took this property back. The oil and gas wells we didn't care so much about. There was some liability associated. We didn't want them. So we foreclosed on this land and this house. Ultimately, we took the property back, and about a year later, we sold this property for $358,000. So in the entire transaction, we realized $448,000 on the $92,000 investment, put the return at about 389%. Off the charts return. Again, these judgments are amazing. If there was one thing I could teach somebody how to do and they really want to do some research, buying these judgments are great returns. Gravity Capital, keep in mind, buying judgments. Feel free to call me if you have any questions, and I would love to talk to you about it. Gravity Capital, where we believe in being the bank.